Am I the asshole for cheating on my husband with his brother? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Was sending me on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 3 years, but my husband's always been very boring and kind of bland. The crazy thing is that I was the one that chased him and wanted to be in a relationship. He was 20 years old when we met, and I met him through a friend. He was kind of charming when I first met him, but what I really liked about him was that he was a doctor, he owned 2 houses and a beach house, and he seemed like a really responsible guy. Before him, I only ever met broke guys, so when I met him, I was like, oh my god, this guy could be it. Oh, and the other thing is that he's extremely shy, so he was not about to make a move on me or even talk to me, so I convinced my friend to invite us all out to dinner so that I could get a chance to talk to him. Throughout the entire dinner, he was so shy he basically avoided me. But then after the dinner, he told my friend that he thought I was cute, so I knew that I could win him. After that, we only saw each other at friends' parties, so on one occasion, I decided to just throw myself at him. I kissed him and I waited for his response. He said, thank you. He finally asked me out on a date and it was okay. I could definitely see me living my life with him. Obviously a boring one, but you know, whatever. We were engaged for 6 months and we started living together after that. He basically lets me do whatever I want with his money, and he also helped me open up my own business. So no, I'm not just living off of his dime, okay? Fast forward to quarantine, his brother came to live with us. And this is when things got really, really complicated. His brother is the total opposite, makes me laugh and we have so much fun together. Like, really good fun. Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for cheating on my husband with his brother? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Was sending me on Instagram. So his brother moved in with us during quarantine. And as soon as he moved in, I was finally laughing and having fun. Like I said, my husband was really boring and shy. So you can imagine, like, even in bed, he was super boring. Like, he never wanted to do it. And if I ever asked him to, he would just say he was tired. So I got really sick of that. When his brother came to live with us, he would make jokes, we would laugh. He basically made me feel alive again. Here's how things went down with him. My husband loves to go golfing with his golfing buddies, so he would leave every single day for like 2 to 3 hours just to do that. So I was pretty much all by myself all day. He would also spend a lot of time where he worked at a hospital. On the other hand, his brother was home all the time. He and I would watch movies. He even started helping me out with my online business, and soon we became really good friends. I would tell him everything. I would even complain about how boring his brother was. One night we decided to have pizza and wine, and between us we both had 3 bottles. Throughout the movie we kept laughing, and every time I would just get closer and closer to him. Eventually I was sitting right next to him. That's when we look at each other and we just started macking on. It was uncontrollable passion and I didn't know how to stop, and we ended up doing it. Part 3 is up. Am I the asshole for cheating on my husband with his brother? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. As we were making out on the couch, I just kept thinking how much better my life would be with him, as opposed to his boring brother. One thing led to another and we ended up doing it. And it was magical. And then every single day after that, we would kind of just smile at each other. When my husband was at home, he would steal kisses from me. If I was sitting on a chair, he would come by and quickly tickle my shoulder. I was living like a full-on romance novel. Of course, my boring husband didn't even notice. I was suddenly happy all the time. One day I asked my husband if he had noticed the change in me, and he said, "You're being silly. What are you talking about?" And right there, that confirmed that my husband didn't even care that I was suddenly happier. He wasn't even bothering to ask why. Either way, his brother was staying with us until he found his own house. And guess what? He ended up moving in 2 houses away from ours. By the way, he also owns his own businesses, so he's really wealthy. He's tried to convince me to leave his brother, but I don't know. Sometimes I think my husband doesn't really like women, but I'm not sure. I know you guys will think it's easy to just get a divorce, but I don't want to break his heart either. But at the same time, I want to be happy too. What should I do? Help!
I sustained very bad injuries to my face this month. I'm in the stage of healing when the scar tissue has formed, but it's still very tender new skin. I'm going to have very obvious facial scarring for the rest of my life. The injury starts about 1 inch above my hairline, goes down over my eyebrows, so on that part, hair will not grow. It continues down my cheek where it's the deepest. I'll probably always have an indentation in the fullest part of my cheek. Then it continues to my jawline. In some ways, it's okay. I'm happy it's just cosmetic damage. My friends are super reassuring, telling me how badass and sick it's gonna look. They say I'm still hot as ever, now a little more sexy and mysterious. But in some ways, it really sucks. I know I'm always gonna be seen first as the girl with the scar, and it feels especially bad when people look at me differently. This week, I had to fly home for a family thing. It was a plan I made long before my injury. I wasn't really looking forward to the pity or people making a big deal of it. I'd rather it not be acknowledged. I'd also met with my dermatologist who said I was at the stage of scar tissue formation that I no longer should be dressing the wounds. The skin was healing and instead I needed to be applying topical cream and Vaseline to keep the site clean and moist. It also looks a bit ugly. The building scar tissue is very red and tender, and with Vaseline over it, looks slick and shiny. So I get on this flight. I have the window seat and I put my headphones on and drift to sleep when the plane is still boarding. I wake up to this kid, maybe 4 years old, sat next to me, throwing a tantrum. I didn't catch the first part of it and I honestly couldn't understand what he was yelling about. His father said to me, "Can you cover that injury?" I said that my dermatologist recommends that I don't, so no, I don't think I will. He started snapping at me saying, "There is no need to be so rude. That injury is graphic and it's scaring my little one." I said, "This is my face. The only damn face that I've got. It sucks being told I'm so ugly that I can't show my goddamn face in public." He started to backtrack saying, "Just until it's healed." And I said, "It'll always be with me. Maybe teach some fucking compassion and respect instead of telling a girl half your damn age what you think about her face. That's rude." He actually got up after, and I think he went to the stewardess about a seat change because a young couple came and sat next to me a few minutes afterwards. I've got to admit, I felt so low that I put on my sunglasses and had a quiet cry for a few minutes. Am I the asshole for not covering up my healing scar and for being confrontational about it? Storytime about when I messed up by telling a woman on our first date that her pepper spray is useless. So a friend sets me up with this woman because she thought we have similar hobbies and similar dark humor. We met today for the first time over a coffee and tea. We were actually having a good time, or at least I thought so. We clicked right away and had a lot to talk and laugh about. After like an hour, she suggested to pay for our drinks and go somewhere else for lunch, and I happily agreed. As we were about to pay for our drinks, she started searching her purse for her wallet and put various objects on the counter because she seemed to have a bit of a mess in her purse. One of these objects was the pepper spray. I casually mentioned after leaving the coffee, I'd consider getting a different pepper spray if you plan to defend yourself. This one is quite useless. For a bit of context, I used to test various pepper sprays and tear gas in the military. We were stupid and young, but it was also kind of thrilling. And the product she had was by far the weakest and worst we tested. I just recognized the bottle because it was so bad, and I thought I should let her know that this is probably not the best option to go with. But she obviously didn't know about that because, well, we just met an hour ago. After this comment, our conversation kind of died and she suddenly had a work emergency that she had to go to. It took me a few minutes until I realized that my comment was beyond creepy without any context. I'm definitely not used to meeting new people. Hopefully I haven't traumatized her. My wife and I have been married for 18 years. We have our 16-year-old daughter who's been dating a slightly shy and awkward young man for about 3 to 4 months now. He seems very nervous around my daughter and has admitted in passing comments here and there to my wife and I that he can't believe she agreed to date him and that he thinks she's way out of his league. He seems very respectful, just shy. My wife is usually an independent, awesome woman and her ideals align closely with mine, particularly in terms of feminism and equality. We have both striven to raise our daughter to be as independent and capable as possible. Since my daughter has been dating this kid, my wife has changed considerably and has given our daughter advice that has left me with raised eyebrows more than once. Some of the advice that I've heard my wife give out is, oh, it's cute for boys to pay for everything, especially in your first relationship, or, oh honey, don't worry about that, he can pay for you, if he really liked you, he would, and similar. I try to balance this out by telling my daughter straight away, 2 people in a partnership should be contributing equally. And my personal favorite, if someone asks if they can take you out for dinner, it's reasonable to expect them to pay, but if someone asks you to grab dinner with them, it's reasonable to split the payment. I figured that would be an easy way for a young person to understand the difference. However, I've noticed my daughter becoming more and more entitled to her boyfriend's money. They haven't been anywhere, obviously, since we're home, but she talks about him like, oh, I'll just ask him to pay for X, which leaves a bad taste in my mouth. She also flippantly bragged and mentioned that she gets him to buy gift cards for her, etc. by mentioning her mother's advice. If you really liked me, you pay for X. I spoke to my wife privately and told her my concerns. She insists it's a rite of passage for girls and it's cute that she should feel this guy completely spoiling her. I told her it's not cute for her to be thinking that it's acceptable to view relationships as personal ATMs. And my wife became very angry with me and is now calling me an asshole with a lot of hostility. Am I the asshole for telling my wife it's not cute for her to encourage our teenage daughter to expect her boyfriend to pay for everything in their relationship? Yesterday, I was supposed to spend the night at my friend's house with some of my classmates and we were playing Truth or Dare. There really is no reason for us to choose truth since we already know a lot about each other, so we mostly just went with dares. It was pretty fun and we had some weird challenges. I was sitting next to my friend's brother when it was my turn and a classmate challenged me to kiss him. His sister immediately told my friend to change the dare and so she did. To be clear, her brother didn't say anything when he heard about the dare and just laughed, so he definitely looked like he was okay with it, right? Well, wrong, because after I kissed him, he told me what the fuck am I doing and he looked like he was really grossed out by it. I was honestly a bit offended and asked him why he was so grossed out by me kissing him. I'm actually a pretty okay looking girl and even if I wasn't, there was no reason for him to act like this. He ended up leaving the game and my friend told me that what I did was wrong on so many levels and to get out of her house. My other classmates didn't say anything, so I think they were on my side, but they didn't want to participate in this argument. I'll ask them when they go back home. Anyway, I did end up leaving. Am I the asshole for kissing my friend's brother without his consent during a Truth or Dare? Storytime about when I woke up to a hooded figure standing over me. Due to a multitude of factors, including a recent death of a close friend, I was unbearably depressed at this time in my life. For that reason, my family flew across the country to visit me in LA where I live. We thought it would be nice to visit Catalina Island. When we arrived, it became apparent to us that it was off-season. It was late November, the weather was cold, and as a result, the island was nearly empty besides locals and a few straggling tourists such as ourselves. Our first priority was to ditch our luggage so we could explore the island, so we immediately checked into our motel, though that word hardly does this place justice. I call it a motel because all the doors to the rooms exited to the outside, but in actuality, our room was one of 20 to 30 quaint guest house-looking buildings arranged in a sort of horseshoe shape around a walkway with rooms on either side of the path. The entrance to the motel was essentially one of the points of the horseshoe, and if you walked dead straight, you'd reach the room that we were given, essentially on the corner before you have to go right to go further into the horseshoe. So from our room, one path led back to the street, the other further into the secluded maze of rooms. After a day of exploring and having just finished dinner, it was time for a cold, dark walk back to the room. Catalina Island is a decent distance from the mainland, and let me just say, it gets dark. Similarly dark was my headspace after the dinner conversation took a left turn and my overwhelming depression got the best of me. I pulled my black hoodie tighter over my freezing ears and walked ahead of my parents to the hotel room, telling them I just needed to go to sleep. And I did immediately. Depression sometimes makes that easy. I was already losing consciousness as they entered after me, drifting off without so much as a good night. I then woke up to my mom saying my name, a harsh whisper. The room had 2 beds, my parents' bed closer to the door and mine further in the room. My mom's voice cut through the silence again. She sounded concerned for me. I didn't blame her, considering my mental state at the time. Groggy, I rolled over. What? I asked. As my eyes adjusted to the dim moonlight coming in through the curtains, I saw her turn to face me. She was surprised to see me in my bed. Her eyes got wide. If I'm in my bed, who was she talking to? We both looked back to where she was previously looking and see a hooded figure in all black standing over their bed. In that moment, we were both frozen with fear. Part 2, when I woke up to a hooded figure standing over me. We were on an island in the middle of the ocean and woke up to see a hooded stranger looming over us. This moment seemed to last forever. Life isn't like the movies, where the characters unleash a blood-curdling scream. Sometimes the only thing that comes out is panicked and guttural. My mom's words became low and severe as she said my dad's name in a dire voice I've never heard her use before. Then the hooded figure did something so bizarre and unsettling. It didn't advance towards us, but instead crouched in the corner near where it stood. The way it crouched was so absolutely unexpected, even in regards to this already unexpected situation, that it terrified me. It seemed animalistic. I knew two things. The hooded figure had been standing over us sleeping, and it's not acting in any sort of way that I can understand. As opposed to the infinite moment of this figure standing over us mere seconds ago, the series of events that unfolded when my hulking ex-military dad woke up happened in an instant. Suddenly, we were at the door, not knowing which way the intruder went. My mom was screaming, "Get him! Get him!" My dad was running down one path of the horseshoe, further into the hotel, shouting through sheer adrenaline, "I'm going to fucking kill you!" I ran down the other path towards the street. When I got there, not a sign of the intruder, but it became suspiciously quiet behind me. I ran back to the room to find my dad quietly walking back, his head low. He gets really close to me and I hear him say, "It's a fucking kid." So basically, some young teen, tall and lanky as I am in my 20s, wearing all black including a black hoodie, went into the wrong room. Our room. The one time my parents just so happened to forget to lock the door. My mom woke up when he entered and seeing a tall person in a black hoodie thought it was me, assumedly leaving the room in a depressive episode. And when the hooded figure crouched, that was him realizing his mistake and panicking. He was scared of us. As I got back to the room, my mom walked out and hugs the kid, who was now crying his eyes out. I would be too if a massive ex-soldier was sprinting after me with murder in his eyes. I, 38 female, had two work colleagues, Mary and Adam, both in their late 20s to early 30s. Mary started in the company first and then she got Adam to join and they worked in different departments, but Mary was in mine. Later, Mary left the company to pursue another career. When they started at the company, they were already married for a few years. Now, Mary is the kindest and loveliest person I've ever met. She was always polite, helpful, and would cheer anyone up. We missed her dearly, so it came to a shock when we found out that she was divorcing Adam because he had cheated on her. I called her to express how sorry I am that this happened to her, and we were talking almost daily ever since. I was impressed at how well Mary holds herself in this situation. She wouldn't badmouth Adam, and the only thing she mentioned was how her wedding dress and a few family heirlooms went missing when she was moving her stuff from their apartment. She thought they might have been misplaced in a different box and would turn up eventually. A few years passed. I now work in the same department as Adam. He's a good work colleague but can be dismissive and ignorant at times. Adam invited me to his wedding with the lady, Chelsea, he cheated on Mary with. As the entire department was invited, I said yes, making sure Mary was okay with this. I've also told her where the wedding will be. It's not too far from where she lives and we could go for some drinks after if she wanted to. On the day of Adam's wedding, I noticed that Chelsea is wearing a similar dress that Mary wore in the photos of her and Adam's wedding years ago. So without thinking, I snapped a picture and sent it to Mary with the caption saying, "Doesn't this dress look familiar?" Mary saw the message but didn't respond, and about an hour later, police show up at the venue. I should add in that police in our country are ruthless and any theft is considered a criminal matter for the police to deal with. The police asked Chelsea to take the dress off and all the jewelry off. Chelsea refused and started arguing with them, and then Adam joined in. Since they were rude to the police, they were taken to the police station. Everyone at the wedding had to leave. I tried to call Mary, but she wouldn't pick up the phone. Later, we found out that Chelsea was wearing Mary's wedding dress and her heirlooms. Mary spotted them on the picture I sent her and called the police. Apparently, she had previously asked Adam if he had them and he declined, saying that he never saw them. So after she saw the picture, he knew that he was lying and stole them. Chelsea had to leave her wedding dress and jewelry at the police station and go home wearing her underwear and Adam's jacket after they were bailed out. Yesterday, Adam returned to the office and went completely mental on me. He blamed me for sending a picture to Mary and ruining his wedding. He also called me an asshole for what I did. Am I the asshole for ruining my colleague's wedding and getting them arrested? I'm 24 and my friend moved in with me after she lost her job about a year ago. We started sleeping together 3 months after she moved in. We're almost in a relationship and we do everything together. She's told me that she loves me, but she's hesitant to define our relationship. So we're basically a couple in everything but the name. Right now, she's visiting her mom. She had texted me that she missed me and she couldn't wait to get back. I texted her back saying, "I miss you too, love." Apparently, she was on a drive with her mom and she had her phone connected to her car and her mom accidentally had the text read out loud while trying to change the music. She called me up after and she was so furious. She blamed me for it and she sounded so angry. She said her mom was acting weird and said it was all my fault. She said that she's gonna get kicked out from her family because of me. I feel really numb. I really love this girl. She's amazing, but I feel like she just wants us to be in this limbo where she can spend time with me and then go back to dating and marrying a man. She doesn't even want to be my girlfriend. I feel so guilty for what I did. I just want to talk to her, but she's not picking up my calls and is giving me the silent treatment. She's never done anything like this before and I just feel so fucking lost on what I have to do here. Outing her was an accident and I don't know what to do. Story time about when I messed up by sleeping with a married woman. It started out as a normal beer with friends last Friday. We always go to the same pub to start, sometimes stay there all night. It's a cool pub which only plays heavy metal and rock music. If you're sick of chart music or pop, it's a great spot to hang out and play pool. We got there, I paid for a round of drinks for us, and we started out the night smashing Metallica and Sabbath on the jukebox. The friends I'm there with have other friends who I'm less acquainted with, but I know their faces and vaguely their names. So as we're drinking and picking songs, a few girls walk over to my pals with the usual, "Hey, how you doing?" etc. The woman I'm talking about is one of these friends and introduced herself to me. She was nice, tomboyish, quite good looking, and I had fun chatting with her. She asked me to put Bruno Mars on in this pub, and that was the first red flag. A few more drinks into the night, we get bored of the jukebox and head out at the beer garden to smoke and chat some more. I immediately noticed wherever I sat, she would pick the seat next to me and sort of lean in. She would get really close. I thought, okay, cool, she seems interested in me. Maybe this could be a good night. I told her I was staying with my buddy and his girlfriend at their place since my car was already there. She's good friends with my buddy's girlfriend, so she bagged staying over there too, and we all got a taxi back together. We got back and continued drinking and partying together. We were all really drunk and flirting was less awkward at this point. She was cuddling into me on the sofa whilst we chatted. At some point around 3 in the morning, something, she pulls her phone out and says, "Wonder what the hubby's up to." And I was like, "Wait, what? You have a husband?" To which she replied, "Yeah, for 10 years. This was just a stepping stone in the fuck up." I asked her to come outside and chat for a bit, saying, "What the fuck are we doing?" She explained that the relationship had been dying for years, they lived separately, and it's not even a real relationship anymore. I don't know what I thought about this, but I kept the flirting up as it calmed me down a little bit about the situation. Eventually, we ended up in bed together and had sex. It was awful. I don't think we're compatible in that regard, but I tried my best nonetheless. I didn't want to be labeled a shit shag or whatever. So I wake up the next day pretty early and leave saying thanks for hanging out, etc. But I gotta get home. I thought, okay, mistake hasn't been made, but we'll just leave it at that. After all, her marriage isn't going well and will inevitably end. And here comes the fuck up. She found and messaged me on Facebook something along the lines of, "Would gladly let you throw me around again, XXX." And I clicked on her profile. My freaking heart dropped. I instantly recognized the pictures of her husband and they looked so happy together. At least online they did. The husband is someone I used to smoke with and chill with a lot through secondhand friends. All I can say about this dude is that he's a really great person and I enjoyed his company. Sometimes he would talk about how his wife was being crazy and distant with him and it made him sad. I messed up, guys. I need to tell him that I don't want to hurt anyone, but it's beyond that now. I followed my second head and this is where it's landed me. Story time about when I accidentally showed my private parts to a stranger. I was going on a trip on a train to the capital for work, and there I'm on my seat waiting for the time to go by and having all sorts of liquids since I was thirsty. Then, surprise, surprise, my bladder got full. It's time to pee. I go to the toilet and they had to have an intelligent toilet technology that opens with buttons. Freaking buttons. And each button indicates something. So if the button is showing a red light, it means the toilet is occupied by another person. If the light is showing green, then the toilet is empty and you're ready to go. The thing is, once you enter the toilet, you have to shut the door again with some intelligent AI technique lock from the future that really made me uncomfortable. It didn't help the fact that I'm also claustrophobic and this toilet was also small. That thing gave me anxiety, so I decided not to lock it and I was like, nope, I'm not ready to get stuck inside today. And of course, by doing that, it didn't show any lights outside. So I did my thing. I peed and it felt good. It was long. And the minute I was about to pull up my panties and pants, the door opened. Both me and the guy are just in complete shock for like a good minute. Him just looking at me and my vajayjay naked in the frog position and me just being in disbelief. I immediately closed the door in his face and I got a panic attack inside the damn toilet. I was never more embarrassed in my life. I think I pretty much traumatized this person. Then I stayed in the toilet for some time, like a good 5 minutes, because I wasn't ready to be out in the world after the incident, knowing he may be outside waiting for me to go out. When I finally succeeded to go outside, all the passengers were looking at me in a weird way. I felt like I was in a nightmare. My mom was like, "You didn't lock the door, did you?" Story time about the time I pulled a deaf woman over for speeding and asked to see her vagina. This happened a few years ago when I was a young police officer in the college town in the South. To set this up, our department had been teaching us American Sign Language to help officers serve the public. I was all about learning sign language and picked some up pretty quickly. Or so I thought. Well, one night in the summer, I'm on traffic enforcement looking for drunk drivers, and about 1 a.m, I stop a car for speeding. As I approach the car, a young and very pretty co-ed was driving. I start talking to her, but she indicates that she's deaf. Now, I still had an ASL for police officers class from a week ago fresh in my mind, and I think to myself, great, I get to use a new talent in the field. I indicate that I can sign and she smiles. So far, so good. Now, I need to add that I was nervous since this was the first time I had used this on the street and she was very pretty. I then signed that I needed to see her driver's license. A look of terror crossed her face and my cop radar went off. I was thinking, what have I stumbled upon? I had dealt with people who didn't have a license, were dangerous, were drunk, or had warrants. I again signed that I'm a police officer and I need to see her driver's license now and put my cop face on. I also remember that to a deaf person, the look on your face is equivalent to your tone of voice, and apparently I was near screaming with my look. Now, to add to this, it's 1 a.m, it's very dark on the side of the street, and I'm 6'2" and 230 pounds, and she's about 5'2", maybe 100 pounds. This poor girl was freaked out. I finally realized that I haven't stopped a serial killer and simply ask, well, why? To which she looks down at her crotch and shakes her head violently no. Well, my little pea brain begins to gather information in, and I realized that I had been lazy in signing the sign for driver's license and instead had been signing, I am a police officer, show me your vagina. I still cringe at that, and I must have lit up the road with 1.1 gigawatts of red face, and a look of embarrassment and horror caught her off guard. Well, she was on guard 100% at that point, and she realized that I wasn't a rouge police officer using my authority to sexually assault her on a dark street, but just a cop that sucked at ASL. Well, she started laughing at me, and it had to be the relief she felt mixed with the humor of what I did. It took her several minutes to compose herself, and I just stood there looking sheepish. I earned every second of her laughing. I just kept apologizing over and over. I'm glad I got that one right at least. Needless to say, she did not get a ticket, but a story about this well-meaning but dumb police officer that severely messed up a traffic stop. Story time about when I fell into a manhole on the first date. So I was on a date with a guy that I met a few months ago at a seminar. We were texting frequently. I didn't like him much at first. I just wasn't in the mood for getting to know someone, but the more we've talked, the more I was interested because he's really smart, polite, and gentle. Finally, we decided that we should go on a date. We met during the daytime, went bowling, and had lunch together. It was really nice. The conversation was really good. We laughed a lot, and I really enjoyed every minute of that 4 to 5 hour date. Now, have you guys ever felt nervous when the first date was about to end? You just don't know how to say goodbye to them because you don't know if it's too soon for a kiss or a hug or just wave at each other and go separate ways? Well, I was really nervous and overthinking, and in those moments, while we were walking through the square, I wasn't paying attention to anyone or anything. When we got to the point where we say goodbye, he was talking about how he enjoyed the date and he's looking forward to seeing me again. I was so focused on him that I didn't even notice there was an uncovered manhole near us. I really hope he didn't notice it either. So we were just passing by the manhole when he stopped and and said, okay, I need to go this way, blah, blah, blah. Now the manhole was right behind me, a step away, and I'm telling him, oh, okay, I'm gonna go this way, pointing with a thumb behind me. And just as I've said, see you soon, while looking at him, I made a step back and just completely disappeared in front of his eyes in a fucking manhole. There I was in a vault, wishing he didn't just see what happened, but as I look up, I see his face, and he's asking me if I was okay. I got a few scratches and was covered in mud. The vault wasn't that deep, there were pipes in it and a lot of rotting leaves and mud, but at that point I just wished the ground would have opened and swallowed me because I was so embarrassed. He helped me get out of there, I thanked him, and I went home. I'm sure he's gonna ask me out again because we did enjoy the date, but I'm sure I'd feel so awkward. I'm 43, my wife Greta, 45, have 4 children. Kiara's 18, Sean is 6, and a set of twins, Charlotte and Austin, are 4. Charlotte and Austin have always been horrible sleepers. I won't go into all the things that we've tried to get them sleeping well, but for now, I'm thrilled that they sleep in their beds at least 3 hours without coming into our room. Kiara and the twins sleep down on one side of the house, while Sean and my wife and I's bedroom is on the other end of the room. The only reason we don't have the twins down on our end is that the room only fits one bed on it, and neither child wants to sleep on the top bunk. I tried it once, and Charlotte woke up screaming, terrified in the middle of the night, and then Austin refused to even go near the bed. The room will also not fit a double bed and the twins' dressers' toys in that room. For whatever reason, Kiara has begun having night terrors and waking up screaming, which in turn wakes up the kids. I wanted to take her phone, but my wife said no. Instead, I threatened Kiara that if she woke up the kids again, she'd be the one putting them in their beds and sitting with them until they were settled in again, not us. Last night was the worst, and instead of screaming once, Kiara was yelling out until I raced all the way down the house and flew her door open, turning her light on. The twins were already crying in their room, so I made Kiara get up, show them that she was fine, and told her to stay in their room until they were asleep and went back to my own bed. This morning, Kiara has tried to sleep and was still trying to sneak back to bed to sleep at 11 a.m., and when my wife asked her why she was so tired, I told her, and told Kiara that this will continue to happen every time she ruins the twins' sleep for no reason. She has no trauma, no reason to have nightmares, and she even told me that, I know I'm dreaming, but I can't make myself wake up, but I can make myself scream to wake up. So that tells me that this is intentional. My wife feels that I'm an asshole, but I feel like she's too soft on Kiara, and I'm doing this for her. I'm doing this because she deserves her sleep and not to be woken up because an adult cannot control herself, versus when our kids wake up due to nightmares, bedwetting, and etc. Am I the asshole for making my daughter get up at 3 in the morning? Me and my ex-fiance had been together for almost 6 years and engaged for about 4 of those 6 years. I was introduced to her by a close friend at a party and we just clicked. She was attractive, had a great personality, and had similar hobbies as me, which made it perfect. Back in April of this year, I started noticing little changes in her. She started wearing more revealing clothes to work, started putting on more makeup, and etc. To be honest, I had no problem with any of that stuff as it's her body. But what made things worse for me was when she started coming home late from work, or how instead of spending the weekend off with me, since we both had weekends off from work, she instead would always go out. I once had asked her why she never invited me to come out with her, to which she replied it's only girls' night out, and her other friends would not be happy if I tagged along as they were not bringing their own BF with them. It all came crashing down when me and her had a huge fight in June because she had decided instead of going out on a date with me, she told me how she had already made plans with her friends and that it was rude of her to cancel. That was it for me. I fucking blew up on her and we had a huge fight which resulted in her packing her bags and leaving. I didn't hear from her for almost a week, none of her friends knew where she was going, and heck, none of her folks even knew what was going on until she finally contacted me and wanted to talk. Imagine my surprise when she confessed to me that there was another guy involved and how all this time she was hanging out with him and lying to me about hanging with her friends. I fucking blew up. I wanted nothing to do with her and was going to break up with her until she got on her knees and begged me to give her a second chance, which my dumbass self did, but only after she revealed everything to me. It made me sick to my fucking stomach, but in the end, I forgave her and told her to delete all contact with the guy and that I expect her to have no contact with him going forward, which she promised, and things kind of went back to before. We were even spending more time together, but that feeling, that trust, wasn't there anymore. Everything was kind of okay until 2 weeks ago when a friend of mine who was visiting another city, which was 3 hours from where I live, sent me a picture and message saying, "Sorry bro." That broke my already broken heart into a billion little pieces. The picture was of my ex-fiance at a mall 3 hours away from where we lived, holding hands with some stranger who I didn't know. I fucking broke down. I was heartbroken. I was so mad because I thought she was at work while in reality she was 3 hours away holding hands with her lover. When I got home from work, I waited for her and decided that I was going to confront her when she got home. Part 2, my ex did something terrible because I wouldn't take her back and now I'm being blamed for everything. When I got home from work, I waited for her and right away confronted her, to which she denied and called me a psycho for not believing her. She also said that I was a piece of shit for not trusting her until I showed her a picture that my friend sent me. Her face told me everything, and that's when the waterworks started, and I knew that I had made a huge mistake in taking her back, so I ended it. She cried and begged me to think it over and not throw away everything that we have together, which made me really angry, and I'm not gonna lie, but I hit her. I wasn't proud, I'm still not, but saying shit like not to throw everything away when it was her who threw everything away pissed me off to the max. I told her to pack her shit and leave, called her parents and mine and told them everything. Her parents came to help her and I told them basically to F off after they told me to think it over and to make the right decision before actually ending it. She begged me again not to end things, but I had to for my own peace of mind. I didn't hear from her or her parents until 3 days ago when my parents called me to let me know that my ex-fiance had unalived herself. Her parents found her and she had left a letter apologizing to everyone, including my parents and me. She said she's sorry from the bottom of her heart for what she did to me and that she can't live without me and that's why she ended it. I'm at a fucking loss. My ex-fiance's friends and family are blaming me and my own mother told me that it was my fault. She told me that I should have forgiven her since I'm clearly worth committing blank over. I need some serious advice as I'm pretty much being cornered by basically everyone and I really don't know what else to do. Is this all really my fault? I'm 30 and my girlfriend, 27, is Indian. She moved to the US a few years back. I'm American, white if that matters, and we live in North Carolina. My girlfriend loves to cook. She told me so on our first date. However, I'm not the biggest fan of Indian food. I find that a lot of spices used in Indian food irritate my stomach and I have a very low tolerance for hot and spicy foods. She's never had an issue with this and never forced me to eat anything I didn't want to. In fact, whenever I stayed over, she made me things like pancakes and French toast and they were incredible. She's a very good cook. 2 weeks ago, we moved in together. Our place is a large, fully equipped kitchen and my girlfriend was ecstatic about all the things that she can do. I was happy to see her so happy. However, in all of our excitement, I didn't realize how our food preferences can actually become a problem. You see, I didn't realize that she cooks and eats a lot of Indian food, like all the time. For the past year, whenever we've spent time at each other's apartments, she's always made me things like ramen, pasta, lasagna, tacos, soups, grilled cheese, etc. I figured that's what she normally ate. I have a few Indian American friends and they told me that they don't exclusively eat Indian food at home, so I thought it was the same thing with her. Yesterday, she was super excited to show me something and dragged me to the kitchen. There, she unveiled a whole drawer of spices. We're talking about 20 to 30 different types of whole, crushed, powder spices, neatly stored in glass bottles and labeled. I asked why she needed so many spices and she replied, "To cook Indian food, silly." I told her that I didn't like Indian food and she told me not to worry, she wouldn't force me to eat anything, that it's just for her meals and that she'd made separate meals for me. I asked her if she could simply not cook Indian food in our house at all because the smell is so pungent and if she'd cook regular food instead. She told me that Indian food is regular food to her and I'm going to have to get used to it. I insisted and she said that she'll only consider giving up cooking Indian food if I give up cooking up meat at home. She's vegetarian because she doesn't like the smell of the meat being cooked. I told her that it was unfair to ask because she never objected when I cooked meat at my apartment. She told me that she's only demanding that I give it up because I'm doing the same thing to her. I got quite mad and told her that she was being extremely unreasonable as I need meat. I work out a lot and I need protein, but she doesn't need Indian food all the time and she can order takeout if she craves it. She told me that restaurants are not very good where we live and it's unhealthy to eat takeout every day. We ended up arguing for a while and now we're not talking to each other. Am I the asshole for insisting that she doesn't cook with spices? My ex and I split back in October when our son was 6 weeks old because I had extreme cramping and bleeding to the point where I would pass out. I went to the hospital and was told that I had an STD. My at the time husband tried to convince me that I must have gotten it from my midwife not cleaning herself properly, which is ridiculous. At point blank said he wasn't welcome in my home until he told me the truth. The house is in my name and I have paid for 100% of it. He finally admitted that he started having an affair with one of his students at university while I was pregnant. My pregnancy was high risk due to my age, 41, so my doctor recommended no sex after 34 weeks. He justified it by saying that it was unreasonable for me to expect him to go without sex for months. I ended up kicking him out and we're now going to court to settle for custody of our son. Over the New Year's, I visited my ex-in-law so they could see our son, and my ex-mother-in-law took me aside and asked how I wasn't ashamed for giving her son an STD. I quickly set the story straight and showed her evidence proving what had actually happened. My ex is now having a meltdown because his parents have kicked him out over lying to them. He's blaming me for running my mouth. I also reported the university back when it happened as I stalked the girl's social media and found out that she turned 18 in June and I was deeply concerned that she had been a minor when they met. We had intercourse twice when I was about 4 weeks postpartum, which is how I contracted the STI. I was and still am absolutely furious as I felt pressured into it and then find out that he had been cheating anyway. Not to mention it had been something like HIV that I could have unknowingly passed to our son by breastfeeding him. Am I the asshole for telling my ex-mother-in-law that my ex cheated on me and gave me an STD 5 weeks after I gave birth to our son? My little brother, 16, has been living with me for over a year now. Our parents kicked him out when he came out and I couldn't not take him in. He's my baby brother. My partner set a few ground rules when he moved in. No parties, his rent would be our weekly grocery bill, and if he could look after our 2 children, 6 and 10, while we were both working late, that would be amazing, and there would be no guests in our home. He agreed to all these conditions and was holding up to them very well until recently. My brother recently got a new boyfriend who we have met a couple times and he seems really sweet, but we don't really know him that well. Anyway, my partner and I were working late the other night and he called me to find out if his boyfriend could come around, and I told him that I'd rather he didn't be around my girls while we were not there. He seemed fine with it and I thought nothing of it. However, when I get home, there was his boyfriend sitting on the couch with him. I didn't disturb them because his boyfriend seemed emotionally distressed. He was crying, and when he left, I asked my brother what happened. Apparently his boyfriend just found out his parents are divorcing. I told him that I was sorry for his boyfriend, but I asked him not to have him over around my daughters until we were home, and just because they were asleep doesn't change the fact that anything could have happened. We got into a bit of an argument with him defending himself. I ended up telling him that I felt extremely disrespected and worried for my daughters because he wasn't honoring our agreement, and I have no idea how many times he's had people in the house without permission. I told him unfortunately he's going to need to find another place to stay. I have kids to look after, they come first. We don't take much rent off of him, and he's got $15,000 in his bank account. He's not running a risk of being homeless. I told him he had until the end of March to find a place, and until he does, his regular duties stand. He started crying and apologizing and asking if he could stay, so I told him I wasn't disowning him like our parents, he just can't live here anymore. My husband says that I was a complete asshole and I need to tell him that he's allowed to stay. He said he's called first, so he's most likely never had anyone else over without permission, and he'd be a pretty bad boyfriend if he wasn't there for his support. I feel like I may be the asshole because my husband is usually tight on the rules and even he's willing to bend them for this. Am I the asshole for telling my younger brother that he needs to find somewhere else to live?
The most beautiful time. The most beautiful time. The most beautiful diamond.
My girlfriend wanted to pose nude for an art class. I wasn't okay with it as my friend attends that class and I feel uncomfortable with him seeing my girlfriend naked and keeping a drawing of my girlfriend naked. She told me it was fine because it was non-sexual. I went to my friend and asked him if he would skip the class, but he went off on me about perverting his art. So I decided just to grin and bear it. My friend finished his drawing and hung it up in his room. Next time me and the rest of our friends hung out together, he made a big fucking deal about how it was my girlfriend. I was then subject to jokes and comments about my girlfriend's body. One guy took a picture of the painting, posted it on his Instagram story, and tagged my girlfriend. So my girlfriend was uncomfortable with that and with my friend seeing her naked. In her defense, she thought a lot higher of my friends than she should have. She then said I should get my friend to take it down. I told her that he refused last time and went off on me. That's when she suggested that I buy it from him. I offered to buy it yesterday, but my friend told me that he wanted it for his portfolio, and since he'd be taking it from that, he needed a lot of money. He wants $250 for that drawing. I'm a broke college student and I just spent most of my money on books and classes, so I'm short on funds right now. So now I'm in an awkward position because I can't tell my girlfriend that I can't afford it for obvious reasons, but she really is uncomfortable by him hanging it up. I'm at a loss. What can I do? I, 28, and my husband, 29, have been married for 5 years. My husband was a nurse until he told me that he wanted to become a doctor. I was fully supportive, and he is now in his first year of medical school. I've been supporting the both of us as he can't work while in school, but recently found out our rent was being raised by $500 at the end of our contract in April. This was honestly the last straw as it pushed us past where we were financially comfortable, so I raised the idea of us buying a home. This had been in conversation for years, but my husband had always said that we could after he paid off his school debt from nursing, which was paid off early in 2020. I asked my mother, a real estate agent, who told me that with what we would be paying, it would be better for the money to go towards mortgage repayments and not rent. I brought all of this up to my husband, who shut it down almost immediately. He told me our agreement was to wait until he had paid off all of his debt. I told him that was for nursing and that he was in school for 6 years, which was hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, and some doctors don't pay off their debt until 20 plus years. I told him I had been supportive of this career change and by financially supporting the household, but it was the best financial decision for both of us, but also relieved the financial burden for me. I brought up the savings we had for our deposit and how we could afford something small and modest within the budget, but he told me it was in our best interest to use that money to pay off his loans. I asked him if he realized the financial burden this would put on me, but he said it was temporary and eventually he'd make more than me, so we even, and I agreed to this. My mother called and asked if we were going to look into buying a house, but I told her that we weren't and we'd be looking for somewhere cheaper to rent instead. She insisted we at least consider it because it made the most financial sense and asked if it was because we didn't have the down deposit. I told her that we were probably going to use that to pay off my husband's debt and he didn't want any more debt until he was debt free from his student loans. Days later, my mother and father came to lunch and told us that they had news. They offered to gift us the down deposit of a home. I was over the moon and shocked by the offer. Once they left, my husband exploded on me, claiming I emasculated him and made him look bad in front of my parents. I told him I never asked for this, but we should take it as it was a privilege most people don't get and would relieve so much financial burden on me. He refused to talk to me or my parents until we apologized for shaming and emasculating him, but I refused to. I apologized but told him that I wouldn't make my parents as they'd done nothing wrong. Am I the asshole for emasculating my husband and refusing to make my parents apologize for it? So there I am, on a date with a guy I've been seeing for about 3 weeks. All is going well and afterwards, we go back to his place. Fast forward and we're in the shower. He's a 7-in-1 shampoo, body wash, car oil, also functions as ketchup kind of guy. Surprisingly, he presents me this new soap someone had made him. Smells great, so there I go, washing my body, impressed that he actually has such nice soap. Within moments, my vagina is ablaze. Something is wrong. I remove myself from the shower as gracefully as I can while panicking. My kitty is swelling, becoming huge. Like lips aren't covering this anymore and it's just getting bigger and bigger. While he's still showering, I call my mother, I know, frantically. I'm explaining in great detail what's happening while panicking. I have seriously grown a small wiener at this point. I'm staying as quiet as possible while a show plays in the background. Little do I know, this dude has supersonic hearing and has heard my whole panicked, detailed conversation before walking in on me examining my incredibly swollen lady bits. He very calmly asked if I need to go to the hospital while I'm playing this as cool as a cucumber, explaining that I'm fine and everything's okay. This is where Morgan Freeman would come in and say she was not fine and everything was not okay. I proceed with the rest of the evening remaining as calm as possible, hoping this torture would end. Turns out I was allergic to the new soap and my most sensitive area was the only thing that had a reaction. Everything's fine now and it's all laughs, but man, did that make for a very uncomfortable evening. I was so mortified, I was fully prepared to leave the country.
Give me something
If you ever want to wear a wig, don't do what she did. Talia bought a wig one day that didn't fit, but instead of returning it, she did something that quickly became terrifying. She came up with an unusual idea. This was her first mistake. She searched for ways to alter the wig herself. Then she went into her mother's room, took out a sewing kit, and began working. But Talia actually decided to put the wig on first and sew it in front of a mirror. She thought this would make sure the size was perfect. Afterwards, she was actually really satisfied with the result. Then that night, Talia went to take the wig off, but the wig seemed to feel much tighter than before. But she had school early tomorrow, so with one pull, she took the wig off. Then, without looking, she put it in her closet. That night, she woke up to a wet sound ringing in her ear. She tried to go back to sleep, but realized that her dog had come onto her bed. She pet her dog and went back to sleep. It wasn't a big deal. But the next morning, she noticed something strange in her closet. The wig didn't look the way it did before. It was covered in pieces of blood and skin. Then Talia went into the bedroom and turned around. She realized that she had sewn her own scalp into the wig, then ripped it off. In the back of her head, she could see her own skull. Then she realized why there was a wet sound ringing in her ears last night, and she began screaming.
This was the day that someone attempted to kidnap my sister. So my family and I went on a trip to Paris back in 2014, I believe. And on one of the days, we really wanted to go see the catacombs. And I don't know if this is normal, but there was a super long line there, and they told us we had to wait for about 2 to 3 hours. So to pass the time, we were sort of just exploring, walking around the streets, looking at stuff. And my sister and I were probably walking about 10 meters in front of my parents. Now, this was a very crowded area. People were everywhere. We were like a can of sardines or something. And suddenly this man in the crowd grabs my sister's arm and starts pulling her through the crowd of people. And I was the only one closest to her, so I started screaming, going after this man. I even started kicking him. And I was so worried that I was gonna lose her in this crowd. Well, my dad saw us screaming, he ran over and he threw this guy across the road. I'm not even kidding. The man ran away and I just cannot believe that happened.
I have a movie idea. I know it's been a little bit, but I'm back. So hear me out. A young woman has spent basically her entire life in the mental hospital. But while she's in the hospital, she gets pregnant and has a baby boy. Soon after his birth, she begins to act normal and stable, so she gets released to raise him. But by the boy's 18th birthday, his mother is very ill. So he went to go visit her, maybe for the last time. But before he left, her last words to him were, "I'm not as crazy as everyone says I am. Trace my steps and come and find me." What? The next day, she died. He wasn't there for the death, and she wanted a closed casket funeral. But her words kept playing in his mind. Come and find me. So he kind of sort of did something really illegal. He dug up her grave. Inside, he found nothing but her mental hospital bracelet from years ago. So he does what she says. He checks himself into the mental hospital and begins to trace her steps. Is his mother alive? Is this some sort of sick game she's playing? Are there more clues within the hospital walls? Or did the pain of her death cause him to lose it?